online, but that case has been deferred to the next meeting. Same location, same time on November 2nd, but just wanted to go ahead and make everybody aware in the event that anybody was waiting to speak on that case that it'll be heard at our next meeting. So at this time, we'll move on to some other quick announcements. Just want to make sure, since we've got a new Metro Council, that I don't believe I see anybody from the Metro Council wishing to speak on any cases, but if I'm not correct about that, and if there's a new face that I'm not aware, then please let me know. Raise your hand if you'd have the opportunity to speak, if you're a council member at this time. If not, we'll keep going through our preliminary announcements and just want to make sure that everybody's aware of the procedures for the cases that are in public hearing. So all the remaining cases on the docket today will be heard by the board. If there is a case, whenever we call up each matter on the agenda, we will ask everybody in the gallery if there's anyone here wishing to speak in opposition. So if you're a member of the community wishing to speak against a case that's on our agenda today, then please raise your hand at that time when we ask you. And in the event that there is opposition to a case, then the applicant will have up to 10 minutes to present their case in chief to the board members. Then anyone who wants to speak against the application together would have 10 combined minutes to make their presentation. So if you are a member of the community here to speak against a case, then if you have neighbors who are also here to speak, you all might want to speak amongst yourselves and try to decide how you want to divide up your time and who would be speaking first to the board. After that up to 10-minute period in which the opposition would have an opportunity to speak to the board, then any time reserved by the applicant. So if the applicant does not use their entire 10 minutes on the front end, then the remaining portion of that time would be reserved, and at which time then the applicant would have an opportunity to rebut any of the statements made during the opposition period. On the other hand, if there's no one from the community wishing to speak against a case, then when we call that case up on the agenda, and we will ask if there's anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the case. If no one answers that call, then in that case, we consider this an uncontested case, at least in terms of the public hearing portion. There may be letters before the board from neighbors, but if no one's here to speak, then the applicant would have 5 minutes to make a presentation, and the board may also ask questions to applicants, and just note that questions by the board are not counted against your time. Another thing that we want everyone to know is that the Metropolitan Code requires four votes to grant an application. And once a vote is taken on an application, if a party disagrees with the outcome, they may request a rehearing within 60 days. Parties may also appeal a decision with which they disagree to the Davidson County Chancery Court by filing a writ of certiorari within 60 days. All parties are encouraged to seek independent legal counsel before filing an appeal to ensure that all deadlines and procedures are followed. We'll start calling through the cases on the docket today. And so whenever applicant's case is heard, you will come up to this table here in the center of the room. There's a microphone there on the desk, and you'll notice that there are buttons down at the base of the microphone. One of them looks like a little kind of person icon. You'll push that button, a red light will come on. You'll only need to push it once, and once the red light comes on, then you're able to begin speaking to the board. So at the beginning, please state your name and address. That goes for applicants, other supporting testimony, or members of the community in the event that we have someone speaking in opposition to a case. So that concludes our preliminary announcements, and at this time we will start calling through the cases on the agenda. The first case is chronologically out of order pursuant to motion by the board. The last time that it was before the board, we were asked to put this case at the top of the agenda. So this is case 2023-128. This is a request filed by owners Kyle and Anna Sitzler for a property located at 135 46th Avenue North, requesting a variance from street setback requirements in the RS 7.5 district to construct a new single-family home. There was an order issued by the board in 2005, initially allowing this property to be subdivided from the neighboring property. That information is in your packet. And The order indicated as a condition that the lots could be subdivided, provided that under any new construction, that new structure would have to adhere to the bulk regulations in the zoning code, including the setbacks. The property also came before the board last year, asking to expand that previous existing structure and for a setback reduction in order to accommodate that expansion, and that request was approved. The existing home was then demolished, and the property is back before the board seeking a setback reduction from 40 feet to 20 feet for the new construction. Here before you is the zoning map for this area. So this property and the neighboring property are shown in a black square because they have their own separate subdivision plat, but this area is all zoned RS 7.5, at least the area in gray, and then there are a couple of SP zoning areas also in this neighborhood. This is the aerial view, and so that's 46th Avenue. I've gone ahead and turned it so that 46 on the photo is running, I think, north and south. So the house is, the property is there where the red marker is, and you can see it's a vacant property at this time. This was the same aerial view from last year's, just to reflect the structure that used to be on the property. These are current photos. There's one where you can see the neighboring home, and then this is another one from the front. This is a slide to help provide some contextual information regarding the GIS information before you. A couple things that we wanted to point out is that the Nashville base map, the gray base map that's used in the GIS layers, the structures that are shown there are not shown to scale. For instance, you can see in red the subject property, and then of course next to it to the right is the house at 4600 Nebraska. In this map that's depicted, it would look as though the two structures are roughly equidistant from 46th, when in fact if you look down below or up to the right, those are photos of, that was the aerial view from last year, so you would see the previous existing structure to the left, and then the neighboring home at 4600 Nebraska to the right. There's a portion of the home on this particular lot that actually would have been closer to 46th Avenue, which you can see in the aerial views. So using the measuring tool in GIS, it appears as though the prior existing home was something like 30 feet from the right-of-way marker that shows on GIS, whereas the neighboring home is more something like 40 feet. There's a property 3 houses down on the southerly side that currently has an outstanding building permit application in front of the codes department, and in that application they've submitted that their home is 22 feet away from the right-of-way line. So I've shown their site plan that's been approved under the zoning, reflecting that it's 22 feet away. However, this property, if you look at the GIS Nashville gray base map, appears to be somewhat closer to the property. So this is just some helpful information to illustrate that these structures on this gray base map are not presented to scale. Another thing that we wanted to make sure that was clarified is that the contextual street back, of course, is 40 feet because this is an arterial boulevard and there are not enough homes in this block facing 46. So most of these homes are facing side streets. For the homes that are facing side streets, those homes are only required to be 5 feet away from the right-of-way because they're utilizing a side setback rather than a contextual or street setback from the front. So that might help provide some information with respect to why different homes, depending on which direction they're pointing, are either closer or farther away from 46th Avenue. So with that, I wanted to include, in case the board wants to look at this, whenever you all do your deliberations, this was a copy of the previous order from 2005 and the conditions on which the property was subdivided from the neighboring lot, as well as the order from last year regarding the non-conforming structure expansion. Here we have a copy of the site plans that have been submitted. These are the floor plans and then the site plan. And with that, is there anyone here wishing to speak in opposition to this case? I don't see anyone. And so with that, you all have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, board. Emily Lamb, 1801 West End Avenue. Here on behalf of the Sitzers, y'all have heard this case before, so I'm going to try to go through the hardships pretty quickly. I do think we have several hardships that are tied to the land that I will walk through. You should have the memo in front of you that I filed last week. Additionally, we have the other extraordinary circumstances that state and local law both contemplate. And I'm sorry, I've had a cold for a week, and so my voice actually sounds much stronger than it has in recent days, so please excuse me as I clear my throat and cough from time to time. As Ms. Waits just said, this previously came before the board about a year ago, and a variance was granted, a 20-foot variance was granted to allow the homeowners to construct an addition to an existing single-family residence. They went to took painstaking methods, blood, sweat, and tears to try to preserve that house. In the process, they learned that it was irreparably damaged, so it just could not be rehabilitated. So they pulled a demolition permit, demolished the structure, and that's why we're here today. We are seeking the same variance that we sought last year. It's a different site plan because the home is no longer, the previously existing home is no longer there, but it is the same 20-foot setback. The lot, as I outlined in my brief, is much smaller than most of the lots in Sylvan Park, so we've got a much smaller area where we can build. Additionally, we've got 2 easements running through the back of the property, so we cannot push this house any further back because we're going to run into those easements. The right-of-way, as I have outlined in my brief, is extraordinarily large. I think it's 18 feet from the street, so you've got, by appearances, an 18-foot setback built in there because that's going to remain green. And then you've got, on top of that now, a 40-foot setback per the table. We're asking for a 20-foot setback. So essentially that's going to be, again, by appearance, it's a 38-foot setback. So there's no disruption to the streetscape or to the appearance of the homes in Sylvan Park by allowing us this, granting us this 20-foot variance. As Ms. Waite said, there is no contextual setback here because there are only 2 houses on this block, because most houses don't face 46. That's also unusual for Sylvan Park. And it forces the house much farther back, which again, we run into the easement problem then. So trying to comply with one issue, we run into another issue. The existing structure, as I said, was uninhabitable and irreparably damaged, so they were not able to save that. And so we are here today requesting your approval of this variance based on the hardships that I have outlined more exhaustively in my brief, but trying to be sensitive of time. You should have several letters of support in your packet from several neighbors who were immediately adjacent to this property. I have spoken with Councilmember Gadd. We spoke at length over the weekend. She said she is certainly sympathetic to this case. She herself, I think, does not have any problem with it, but because there is at least one letter in opposition, she has chosen to remain neutral and defer to the board. But she, again, she said she's very sympathetic and she understands the hardship and the need for the request. And so we are here just humbly and respectfully asking for this approval. These are not big sophisticated developers who know the process and know the way things work. So they are sort of learning as they go, and called me last week and asked me if I could help them. So that's how I got here today. We're happy to entertain any questions if you have them. I think I've outlined the issues pretty sufficiently, but if you'll have any questions or if you'll have anything you want to add.
Thank you. Good to see you again. I have a couple questions. This might be just a holdover from the multiple times it's been here, but I'm seeing 22 feet and also 20 feet. Could you just confirm the request, specifically reducing it from 40 to 22.8 or to 20?
To 20.
To 20, okay. And then this goes back to one of your attachments. I think you covered it in your intro. You were using it as, I know you said there's contextual setback's a little tough because some of the houses that are closer to 46 are the side of the houses. I'm just gonna pull it back up. 12146, you said it was 38 feet from 46. Is that, did you take that measurement from the property line or from the street?
From the street.
And then is that to the front of the porch or to the front of the face of the house?
Do y'all know that? If it's front porch, front? I mean, the porch is it a covered porch?
It is a covered porch.
So that would, I assume, be to the front of the porch because the porch is not a covered porch is not a permitted setback obstruction. So do y'all know that for sure? I believe it's to the porch. That's
Okay.
based on just
for
knowing
clarification.
that the porch is not a permitted encroachment in the setback. I believe that would be to the front of the porch.
Okay.
And again, the reason that the streets on 46 that are not facing 46 or closer is because the side setback is not as great as a front setback.
Right.
Did you have additional questions?
No, I think I'm good for now. Thank you.
Okay, I had a couple, but does anyone else have any? Okay. The footprint of the house that's been presented, that's on the screen, is larger than the previous application. And I was wondering what the reason was for enlarging the home.
Part of that here, part of the issue, and I'll let them weigh in as well, but part of the issue is that we're adding a garage here. We've got, Sylvan Park has street parking. They can't park on 46th, and there's also an alley that they can't park in, so they don't have parking. So they've added a garage, which is part of part of the site plan. They also are, and again, they may want to weigh in and add more, but they are trying to build a home where they can have children and raise children, so they're trying to make sure they have space for planned but as yet born children.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Anna Sitzler, 135 46th Avenue North. Just want to further clarify what Emily stated. It's absolutely correct. If you're looking at the very top of the site plan, which would be the alley, if you see where there's a little notch there, and then it comes further away from the street, that's 10 feet back from the street, that little rectangle there is the garage. And so it's very similar to the old site plan. If you remove the garage, it went straight across the back of the home, just like almost as if you would slice that off. So that is the primary difference in the site plan that you're seeing. So I know you can't tell it's a garage there, but it's just a one-story, like just parking.
I understand what you're saying. In the new plan that we're looking at now, there's a lot more home at the 20-foot setback, proposed 20-foot setback, than was in the original plans as well.
Part of that is a porch, correct? So it still has the appearance of, I mean, it's a porch, but it's not just a full wall of home. Part of it is going to be a porch that they'll sit on.
I think I can see that as well. I'm just looking at this from last time. Then my other comment is that I see the 20-foot setback at the back for the rear, and now I see the private sewer easement within that 20-foot setback, as well as the other easement is for the most part in that 20-foot setback that you can't build anyway. You can't build in the rear setback. So I just wanted to point that out, that that's something new in this packet that I'm seeing since the last time we saw the case.
Yeah, you're saying that basically the easements back there doesn't impede them anyway because it's beyond the setback. Yeah, no, I agree with there.
Does anyone else have questions? Okay. We'll close the public hearing then, unless you had something else.
Nothing to add, but if other questions come up, we're of course happy to answer them.
Okay, we can open it again if something else comes up. Any discussion?
Yeah, so this was previous to my time here, but this is the previous one that was
Yes.
granted, right?
Correct.
So it's gone from that. To that, right?
Mm-hmm. That looks to be the case. If you want to ask them, then we're going to give him a second to see if he has another question.
Yeah, I mean, it's significantly, I mean, you can say that maybe it has the same front gable as the previous application, but it's a significant change in height and just size. And, I'm worried about such a large structure that close to the 46. You know, most of the other houses that are that close they're kind of older, one-story structures. I'm really connecting the dots on why it changed so much from the previous one. I get that they had tried to remodel this one, but I'm not connecting the dots on why it went from this original plan to this one that's just so much larger. But maybe because I wasn't, part of the previous one.
Well, I think you have everything that we saw in the packet, so.
I guess
It's been a year, I'm not sure I remember everything either, so go ahead.
We can address that if you'd like us to, just,
Was that a question for them? Because I can open the public hearing if that's a question.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I know it's been going on. If you don't mind, open it back
No,
up.
go ahead.
If you don't mind providing a little color, I just wasn't here and it's been a while, and I'm just trying to make, when you're asking for something this much closer, especially to 46, you've got a lot of letters of support, which is great. You don't normally see that in Sylvan Park. So, you don't. So,
wow, was that an understatement? Huh?
yeah, I know. So, and I think a lot of that has to do with the nature of the design of the house, perhaps. But the massing is significantly different than the previous one. And I'm just not seeing it in here, and maybe it is, of why that's changed so much.
Yeah, so I can speak to that just briefly. So on the front, you did mention the gables, and I actually just wanted to let you know that above all three windows on the front, there actually is a gable, so it's not as much roof. It is a little bit more cottagey, if that's even a word. And so it's a little bit more charming actually than the plans that you have. However, in regard to space, the prior garage that we lived in, had shorter ceilings, and then above that, like they tried to make it was a 1.5-story home. The prior owner built out the top story, but it was 7-foot ceilings. None of it was to code. So it wasn't really livable space, up there. So we were working with that, and so when presented with the challenges that we faced and looking at a new plan, that was one way that we could add some additional space for our growing family, and truly that's the reason. We're trying to add to where it was more functional space upstairs, so instead of a 2-story and then a 1.5, that it was previously, or planned previously, I should say, that the plans that you're looking at, it is now just a 2-story home, as planned.
and I would also reiterate that although this doesn't address the massing of the home, but with the 18-foot setback, with the 18-foot right-of-way, adding 20 feet to that, I think we're meeting the intent of setbacks. We've got, 38 feet from the road, so, again, part of that is right-of-way, but were that right-of-way not there, then meeting the 40-foot setback would not be an issue. But we're, running into that, and so I do think certainly the intent of the setback is met here.
And one question, just to clarify, you're not seeking a lot coverage variance, correct? So you would be able to build this residence just as a matter of right without having to on this size of a lot.
It would not look the same,
Well,
but sure.
But the
Correct. We're not
side,
covering
yeah.
more than of the lot than we're
Correct.
permitted to cover.
Yeah, that's what.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions before we close the hearing again? Okay. I have a couple comments, but I wanted to ask a question about the 2005 order. Does that play any role in what we're discussing today? The 2005 order was the order that if an existing home was torn down, that they would have to abide by the required bulk regulation setbacks. Ms. Waits had mentioned it earlier.
Yeah, I'm happy to address it. It honestly has no effect. And and I talked about this last time, once the house got bulldozed, we're back to square one, which is, I was here when the board put this condition on it, but it's conditioned without any teeth to it, because they have to, when you take the building down, you have to conform with the bulk regulations anyway, so.
Okay.
Y'all have done those, not to be enclosed or, those types of just sort of add-ons to a condition.
Yeah, but that it's not the thing which is to be complied with no longer exists, so
Right.
there's really nothing to.
Right. So, this particular condition that's what they have to do anyway. I don't know if it adds any sort of anything to the thing. I'm working on, you guys have seen a litany of covered front porch appeals come to this board. I'm working with council member Van Reese to do a text amendment to allow those as permitted setback obstructions, since we allow, so long as they don't enclose it. And we're going to incorporate those standard conditions that you guys put on those all the time. It really has anything to do with this case, but I just thought it came up. I thought I'd mention it to you.
The one thing,
So
and
you'll be seeing fewer of those.
I will ask, because you had asked about the legal effect of the prior order. It did allow the subdivision of the property into two existing lots, and so I don't think that's that carries through, and, with respect to sort of, and I don't know what the question has to do with, like, whether, the nature of the hardship here, but when that lot was acquired, it was exactly the subdivided smaller lot that it was, and so.
The other thing to note on this board no longer has the authority to grant lot area variances.
Okay.
Council specifically took that away.
Okay.
2020.
We used to see those cases all the time, yeah. Did you have a comment, or, I have a comment, but you can go first.
Oh, yeah, for me, I think there've been some questions, I think, about the sort of the size of what's being built versus other, and I think the way I'm thinking about this is that I'm thinking more, I'd like us to be consistent with what we did on the prior variance request, that I think that the nature of the lot and the request is similar enough, and that they're not building something that they could build something taller, they could build something, with this square footage on this lot, and so that's the only thing that comes to my mind.
For me, and it's a fact, that request, the prior hearing was an appeal for a non-conforming structure. So to me, that it's like apples and oranges. That's just how I see it. And I'll say it's a beautiful home, and I hope something can be built that looks just like it. And it may be this exact plan, but for me, I consider the contextualism and that house, that stone house next door, which I drive on 46, so I'm familiar with your property. That one is set back, I think about 40 feet is what I saw in the plat. This home would be 20 feet in front of that home. And that's the part that I struggle with a bit, because it would be just so disruptive to the street pattern just to have that one set back at 40 feet and this one at 20 feet. So that's my struggle with it. And I don't know the hardships. I don't know. I just, the easements, they're in the rear setback and all. So it is a smaller lot, but that was known when it was purchased. So I'm going to listen to what everyone else says. If anyone else would like to comment. We will open up for one more question.
The letters of support,
I believe all of these came in recently after we have spoken with the neighbors. They understand that it's a new site plan. So they're all associated with the current site plan. And I haven't seen those letters, I know that they're in there, but if they uploaded a site plan that was incorrect, that was an inadvertent error on their part. We have spoken with them, and they are in support of this current site plan. As well as Councilmember Gadd, she has seen both of them as well.
Yep.
And she is can't say she's in support. She's remaining neutral.
I see a bunch from 2023, October 10th, or a couple dated that. So if think they are current, several of them.
Right, I'm just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that they were based off.
You think, right.
They are.
New ones.
Yes, they are.
To hear from you. Okay, thank you. That's my question.
Okay, we'll close the hearing again and continue with discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm having I'm having a there's an elevations and concepts back, but that's just my worry, both in size and how close it is.
But wouldn't,
So,
as I understand it, the appearance is going to be that it's a 38-foot setback. So is the house that you were referencing, because you have an 18-foot easement and then 20 feet from the easement. So it would be a 38-foot setback, and because you mentioned there was one that was 40 feet.
Yeah, that's, I printed it out because I wanted to understand it. It's, I might not be saying it right. It's 40 feet. This one, the new home would be 20 feet from the property line. The existing stone home is 40 feet from the property line. And I can't see very well without my glasses, but I think you can see it on here. We can all blow it up on our board packets, but it was on the plat. That's
Okay, it was, you said,
dated
yeah.
2005.
Okay.
But it's like 40 feet something. So it's just the contextualism of that block face is going to be different. Are there any other comments? Had a suggestion, but wanted to see if there's any other comments first.
Convention trees, I'm just gonna be quiet.
The trees
For
are
the
not,
time
the
being.
trees are no longer there.
make sure he's left on the lot.
I don't think there are very many trees left on the
Yeah.
lawn, but, now, they heard us last time when we had this discussion, and I think I went into a diatribe on trees at that point in time.
I'm sure trees are required by the urban
sure
forester, I
they
would
would
think,
be.
yeah. My suggestion, and I don't know how you all will receive this, but it would be to grant a 30-foot setback because that's the approximate location of the existing home.
Well, I mean, I'm not thinking,
That's just a suggestion and welcome any other discussion.
there's a lot of people that want to make it work, but Sherry, you're saying, or at least mine is. Because, I mean, if you did that, you could essentially use the same plan, they have to do one car garage, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also pretty mindful of the fact that, I mean, we have, in looking at the applicant's brief, I mean, this board has granted setbacks on 8 lots that are smaller than this one.
I don't know if it was our board, some of it says SP,
Yeah,
which
that's
would be
true.
the planning
Which,
commission.
I guess, but wouldn't that not, I mean, I think, you know, if the board granted it or if it was a result of SP, it would still sort of establish what the you know, quote, character of the neighborhood is, if SPs are part of that as well, and so.
Yeah, some of those are on Utah Avenue, which is a different type of street. I don't know if that has any bearing. I didn't study this in great detail.
Yeah, I lived at 41st in Nebraska about 10 years ago. And just, I mean, my observation of 46th Avenue is that the context is, there's such an array of both commercial, but also there's houses that face the side streets and face the front streets, so that I have less of a concern about this, you know, concept of a uniformity along 46th, I think, because of the way that the residences vary and how they're oriented, but, And I mean, and then there's ones that are oriented towards the street. And then there's ones that are oriented along, Nebraska, and I guess Wyoming is maybe the one immediately north of it. So, I mean, that, to me, that gives me less concern about, if this, versus if this were like on the block face on Nebraska or on the block face on Wyoming.
I do agree that, but it seems to me on the other side of 46 has just an exponential amount. If this was for whatever reason on the other side.
Right, yeah.
Be more in alignment. If anything, it might even be set back further than what a handful of those are now. Maybe that's just a way to find out. That's a good point.
Well, if anyone has a motion, if there's, unless there's more discussion.
This is a codes-related question.
It's not a public easement, it's an easement which serves, I think, the property to the south, so.
There are two, I think there's a utility and.
You've got a, flip back to the, you've got there's a 10-foot private sanitary sewer easement that's running. And then there's a 10-foot running northwest to southeast in that corner too. Which I think is I think that's an overhead utility, for NES for that house to the south. But as a general rule, if it were a public one, highly unlikely, which I would presume that's probably the same of private ones too.
Right. I don't know. I mean,
Or get yourself dragged into Chancery Court
Yeah.
for building over the sewer easement.
or not have a two-car garage.
I wouldn't wanna do
I
that.
don't know.
Yeah, no.
I mean, there's a lot of choices in the plan.
I'm trying to find them.
Ashante, did you?
Oh, I don't think I have anything compelling to add. I think Mr. Bradford brought up a really good point, and I thought the brief was really good. My main question when I walked in today was, is this the best base? I think they're hardships, but is this were these choices? Are there certain choices that we're sort of conflating with the hardship? I think that was my question, because I am super sympathetic to the applicant. I thought the brief was very well written. And I think Mr. Bradford has a really good point, but I'm always a sucker for contextualism. And I don't like messing with existing development patterns, especially in very established neighborhoods. And to your point, across the street, it looks different than this side, but I don't know. I think this one's a really hard one for me. And we voted for the last one, but to me it was different because they were trying to save an old house. And it's not their fault that the house couldn't be saved. They did their very best. But the way I kind of looked at it was like, all right, so they couldn't save it. They just all right, start over. What does our dream house look like? Which I understand that because you have a blank canvas, but there are limitations to this lot that I think were known. And so I just think for me, I think some variance is granted. I think sometimes it gets lost and people don't realize it until it's built. Adding an addition to an old house and how it fits on the street and how it feels, and I hate doing things based off of feeling, but when you walk down a street, you get a feeling. And I don't know if this is going to disrupt sort of the rhythm of that street.
And I totally completely get that. And I guess my thinking is even though 46th is the arterial street of this neighborhood, I mean, from the time that I lived on Nebraska and I have some friends that still live over in the area, the feeling and the context is on the cross streets. It's on Nebraska, it's on Wyoming, it's on Idaho. I mean, this is where the majority of those residential structures face. And so I feel, I mean, honestly, and I think this probably goes to Robert's point that he made about the volume of letters from Sylvan Park being this heavy sort of in favor of it. To me, it speaks to the fact that this really isn't this is not a disruption of Nebraska Avenue or Wyoming Avenue or Idaho Avenue that, you know, if, not to short shrift 46th Avenue and its importance as a street, but,
Sounds like you're about to.
well, I think maybe I am, but that it's not really you know, if we went over,
Dangerously.
if we went over to 42nd or to 41st and you were to walk up and down one of those streets, you know, it's the sides of houses, it's fences, it's garages. 46 just happens to have some front-facing structures and some side-facing structures, and so, you know.
And commercial structure.
Yeah, and so that's sort of why, like, I'm, you know.
It's a hodgepodge of things, you're
Yeah.
right. And the best part of it is and I drive it a lot, so when I drive it and I see the front-facing homes and they're all in line, and you see the grass in front and trees and hedges and all, that is the most calm, nice part of 46th. And so if this house is built and it's 20 feet back, it will disrupt this block face. That was my point. I'm not saying that there isn't other disruptions, it's just this block face is what my concern was. That's why I suggested maybe a compromise.
Well, to go off that compromise, it was 25 feet, so 5 feet more than what they're requesting. They have it a foot in the back to push it. That means they only would have to essentially carve out 4 feet out of the plans. That pushes it 5 feet further back, closer to, you know, maybe not quite 30, but might still allow them to get this, maybe give a little more space off the street, kind of check all the boxes maybe. Would that be, or, yeah.
But anyone's free to make a motion. I might make a motion in a second. If, sorry, I didn't have my microphone on. I might make a motion if no one else wants to make one.
I mean, I could get on board with the 25. I think I'd feel better about that than the 30. I'd like to do the 20, but if the votes aren't there for a 20, then I'd be comfortable with a 25 from a managing the standpoint. So.
Can we see if the votes are there for the 20?
What,
Yeah, if you would like to make a motion, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to grant the variance to reduce the street setback from 40 to 20 feet along 46th.
Okay. There's a motion and a second.
Second.
We will say, all in favor, say aye. Raise your hand. All right, we got 1, 2, 3. 3 in favor, all opposed. Got 3 opposed. So that motion fails. We'll have to try a different motion.
Yeah. So technically, that motion, I think, would have to hold over to the next.
Oh, it will have to hold
'cause it's
over
3-3,
until Ross
so.
gets back. Okay.
Or he watches the movie.
I hadn't considered that, but okay, so that's it.
We'll see y'all next time. Thank you.
Thanks.
I said 25. Should have just made a motion. Yeah. Sorry, I don't know why.
No, it's okay. I didn't realize that would happen. I thought we'd keep making motions.
How did that not get punted?
Under your rules, tie votes stay on our agenda for the next 30 days. Right, so it's a tie vote, 3 motion in favor, 3 for, 3 against, and then the member who's not present can watch the tape become eligible. Yeah, it would, yeah. It would still be the same way on the 3 vote. When you have more than 5 members present, it's for 30, so. And at the next meeting, what we'll do is we'll poll Ross, see if hey, did you watch the tape? Or do you wish to participate? There's actually, it could come back 2 times, and it's 30 days, so there's 2 meetings in 30 days. And anybody can change their vote at the next meeting as well, so. It'll be back in 2 weeks. And it could come back a second time, because we will have 2 meetings in 30 days. All right. Next up.
All right, next case is 2023-116. This is a request for property located at 6011 Hill Circle, seeking a variance in the rear and the street setbacks to 10 feet in the R6 district for construction of what appears to be a single-family home. There is an HPR on the lot, so I think the setback variance is just requesting 10 feet on both sides. So this is a view of what it looks like from above. I've got a few slides here. It's a really beautiful and unique area. So this is the lot facing toward Midtown and downtown, so looking east. And then across, and like in the sidewalk, obviously across from the lot, you can see how the street is lined up in a loop around the lot. So there is a pretty significant slope in this area because this street is like a circular drive set on top of a hill in West Nashville, just a block off of Charlotte. So these are the contours again establishing the hill. If I can get my slide to change. Sorry, my button's sticking. Oh, I've got a swirling spiral going, so we'll just give it a minute. All right. Oh, yeah. Start again. Sorry, I'll have to flip through it. Looks like my computer got tired. I've noticed that I've got a land connection, but I've noticed that it's running a little slow today, so sorry for the delay.
And if it should benefit the staff or the board, we'd be happy to jump into our presentation if that did in fact conclude the majority of the slides.
Members of the board, just for record's sake, I actually represented not this property owner, but a prior property owner on this very property. So just want it disclosed. I'm not a voting member, but if you wish for me to step out, I'll be happy to.
This is like when the collections lawyers all show up to General Sessions Court with all their cases on one day. Is that like is today Thompson Burton Day?
Because you hope nobody else shows up.
Yeah.
I know you can't see it on your screen, but I promise that I'm making progress over here. It's just slow. All right. Yeah, just waking up here from our nap, computer. I can see the presentation. My computer decided to have updates today, which I did go ahead and force them before the meeting, but I also wondered quietly whether this might intrude. I can see it, and I have all this anticipation of it working quickly. No, I don't think so. Here we are back again. All right, that's slide 15, so now I know where to go. So Joey, what's going on? Okay, I think it's gonna land on this slide, so now I'll keep going. We've seen that one. Okay. Okay, computer's still doing a little bit of the same stuff, but we'll just try to keep rolling through it. These are the views from some of the neighboring properties that are more kind of like on the outward facing part of the loop. So yeah, really nice views of Midtown and out toward Bell's Bend. It's another view of that on the top, and then just to give you an idea of kind of the slope from the bottom of the hill. In the picture down below, this was the street setback survey, and then the site plan. So thank you for your patience. I'm finished. And is anyone here wishing to speak against this application? Oh, there is someone. So at this time, please begin.
Thank you, Ms. Waits, and thank you, Madam Vice Chair, members of the board, for your time and attention on this particular case and for your service to the city with this work. My name is John Michael. I'm from the Thompson Burton Law Firm, 1801 West End Avenue. Represent Bicentennial Builders and the client, or rather the partnership that's looking to develop this property, which is zoned R6 at the described 6011 Hill Circle. You've seen the contour elevations. You've seen the aerial of the area. Two words that don't need to be paired together very frequently. And most specifically, the shape of this lot. As you may recall, this was originally recommended for the consent agenda. One question was raised about visibility lines and NDOT's feedback on that subject. You have that in writing, I believe, from NDOT staff, one of the engineers there. In the unlikely event that the board wished to move this back onto consent agenda, I'd certainly be glad to stop talking and give you the opportunity to do so. I've not held my breath on that, however, so we'll continue with our presentation. The overview is this, after having been marked for consent agenda, obviously the hardship associated with this lot is the unusual shape, the very unusual shape. I haven't brought you one like this in the years that I've been working on this stuff shape. That hairpin turn to the far east on what is arguably one of the only two flat portions of this entire area creates such an unusual and difficult to develop hardship that some adjustment to an R6 zone property in terms of the building envelope is almost completely necessary to build houses that fit into the context of the neighborhood. And for those who are fans of context, I would point out that the contextual street setback is but one element of the consideration of contextual appropriateness in residential developed areas. Here, we can point to some of the slides that Ms. Waits presented and some of what is seen already in the second page of our brief that we previously submitted to you. This is very modern construction in the area. These are styles that you've seen prevalently in Nashville in the last 5, no more than 10 years. However, forcing us within the very small box of this completely irregularly shaped lot will yield houses that are contextually inappropriate to those houses all around those here in the Hill Circle area. The question, however, that was raised and sought for some feedback from NDOT was about the propriety of the setback vis-a-vis the roadway and presumably visibility in particular. The feedback from Matt Hatteball, a good engineer at NDOT, was we at NDOT are not supportive. Now, why would they not be supportive? Well, there's a concern about that curve and potential visibility issues if we put a house in there. I would contend that, again, looking at the third page of our brief and kind of a street level photo there, short of choosing not to build any structure on that lot, that's the only way that NDOT gets perfect visibility coming around the curve of Hill Circle, which we didn't build. We didn't design the road that way. The contours of the hill there actually dictated where that road would go. Not even NDOT did that. But that is obviously a nature of a hardship that is in no way connected to our doing, our creation, or anything like that. Now, this is a buildable lot. Nobody's raised that question. It's buildable to R6 standards pursuant to the zoning code. Nobody's raised that question. The creation of two structures on this lot will be benefited, and there is no present design or finalized plan for the second house, but with the granting of this contextual street setback and the rear setback to 10 on each side and in the little corner as well, we'll have the opportunity to build a house that fits the neighborhood, is appropriate for the construction surrounding it, and still leave a footprint for a house with an approximate square footage, or at least a footprint, I should say, should stick with that, of the neighboring house to the immediate west, our closest neighbor. That would allow us also to refrain from having to come back a second time for any sort of relief with regard to setbacks on that house, and hopefully any relief for any nature of the entitlements of bulk regs associated with that second house. For this one, however, I want to spend just a couple of minutes, as I've got a couple left, to talk about the particulars of the turn and the visibility that's at issue there. Visibility of what? The house? Are we concerned that a car is going to crash into a house, whether 10 feet off the street or 20 feet off the street? No. The concern is about car versus car collisions and trying to make sure we have as much traffic-oriented safety as possible. Consider I'll call it a hashed area on the visual in front of you, the light blue coming down toward the middle of the southern portion of this property. That's where our driveway is. Counting the 46.5 feet marked a little to the right or east, slightly northeast of this site plan, you get a mark from what I'll refer to as the apex or the absolute center of that turn down to the beginning of the house. 46 feet from the sharpest point of the turn to the house. And then what's that? I'm spitballing here. The engineers and architects in the rooms will be better at this than me. Another 30 feet, 40, maybe 50, out to the center of that driveway where an actual car would be coming in or out. When we talk about visibility, we're talking about traffic visibility. Traffic means car on car, not somebody walking through the street. That's natural selection. Not the structure of the house itself. The house itself is not going to be crashed into by any cars. However, if we're talking about car-on-car situations, that 90 feet of separation, in and of itself, I would contend, is more than enough to alleviate any concerns about visibility. But perhaps it's not enough. So let's double down and point to that corner. That is such a sharp hairpin turn, shown in the third photograph on page 3 of our brief, written by my partner Josh Lee, who is also represented on this case, shown even more specially on the second page of that brief. Look at that turn. Let's say, for example, I don't know, Mr. Lawless were to come careening around the northern part of Hill Circle in his luxury sled of doom at unsafe speeds, holding it together just enough to make this turn without leaving the lane. He will have zoomed through that little intersection, that little curve, at all of about 12 miles an hour, maybe 15 if he's got extra special handling on said luxury sled of doom. At roughly 10, 12, 15 miles an hour, 90 feet away from our driveway, is there any mathematical, legitimate concern that that is an insufficient degree of visibility? I contend no. The laws of the zoning code are clean here. We merely need the variance based upon the lot shape. The laws of physics work in our favor because you just can't get going fast enough to create a truly dangerous environment. As a result, we think we not only have demonstrated the hardship, but the practicality necessary to justify this setback. Naturally, I'm pleased to take any questions from the board, as is my client, Mr. Giles, who's worked hard to make this a great project that'll be one of the great additions to this outstanding neighborhood. Otherwise, we'll sit back, retain the rest of our time, and see if we need to after other comments.
Okay, any questions?
And yet not above the tree line. So while there are no trees on this lot that our folks were able to acquire, we look forward to a robust collection of hardy tree samples, including absolutely no hackberries or Bradford pears at this location, with no disrespect to certain board members' families and the naming of such trees. We believe that this is a great opportunity to get a little bit of green up there at the apex of this hill, especially with hardy species where there are none presently. It's Nashville, so I'm assuming so. Because there's nothing but under any of these yards, right? It's a rough spot.
You're on a roll right now.
Out in 35 in Bellevue, with that rich loamy soil, we plant all kind of great trees. But this is a tough spot, and our clients have done a great job putting together a great project despite the constraints.
Any additional questions?
I'm shutting up.
I have one here. Quite the colorful presentation, so I'm new to the board. Sounds like you're well-known here, so thank you for that.
Infamous might be a better way of
Yeah,
putting it.
infamous, yes. You mentioned there's the second house to be determined, but it's not shown on the site plan. Is there any particular reason why that wasn't included here? Did I miss that?
Yes, it's not been designed.
It's not been designed.
And theoretically, you could leave this with only the one house. However, the plan is to build a second house. And once we know what we're working with for footprint on this one, we'll know how much space we have to work with to stay within the remaining footprint. Absent that, we've seen other sketches from prior would-be developers as far as what they wanted to try to get in within the existing contextual street setback, which as I recall was 27.6, I believe. To be perfectly frank, it was sufficiently ugly, obtuse, and difficult to build that our folks didn't want to go that route. We believe that not only this house, but even more importantly, the second house will be easier to build, and in the case of the second house, within the allowed footprint. But we want to see what we have here before we commit to what we build with the second. Hard to build when you don't know your footprint.
Okay, and then in reference to NDOT, obviously they didn't really specify much in their letter, so other than their lack of support for this, did they provide any further feedback on what setback that they would be okay with?
That request came from staff and from the board and not from us, so we didn't solicit added commentary on their basis for not supporting the request.
Any additional questions?
Thanks.
Okay, we'll call up the opposition now. Can you please give us your name and address?
Anthony Togra. I live right across the street at 6012B. And the gentleman before me was very colorful. I wasn't really even intending to talk. I was here to get educated, but apparently all my neighbors are working today, so I'm the only one that's here. First of all, let me say I have utmost respect for them. If they're going to build a beautiful house there, I wouldn't want anything less than that, and I appreciate that. I think most of my neighbors, or some of them at least, reached out to you guys and have shared their concerns with you guys. I do live across the street, and with all due respect to the gentleman that speaks very eloquently, I live there, and I have looked at the cars coming around the corner. And sir, 10 miles is not what they go. They actually go a lot faster around that corner. And ironically, there's a video online because 2 doors down from us, there was a FBI raid a few weeks ago. And you guys could see one of the people that got away from FBI going around that corner. So it is possible to go around that corner at 50 miles an hour. Having said that, there are neighbors that have motorcycles that for joyrides, they go around. There are neighbors that walk their kids in strollers. I have no problem with this gentleman building a house there. I would like to see the plan for the second house so we know what we are looking at here, because this is kind of leaves everything open. And I sympathize with their issue as far as the lot size and the shape. But like one of you guys mentioned before on the last thing, they knew that when they bought it. They knew what the lot looked like. I recently built there myself, and I had to abide by the setback. And it cost me a lot of extra funds to do that, because the farther I had to go back, the more I had to dig. Sorry, I'm a little nervous because I don't do this all the time, so in case I'm...
That's okay.
but-
If we could see the aerial again, then maybe you can point out where your house is on the
Yes,
aerial, if you wouldn't mind showing us. The computer's gonna be
Yes.
slow
That's all
again.
right.
Okay, so keep going, and as soon as we get there, we'll ask.
Looking at that view that the gentleman just showed, if there is, and I'm not speaking for all my neighbors, I know they have different concerns. If there's really visibility around that corner, that cars can be seen coming around the corner, I'll be open to that. But I don't really understand where they are and how much, they're asking for, I think, 10 feet when there's 20 feet or 27 feet. So I see where that car is parked? I live right across the street from it. Right, that black car right there, I'm right here on this side. The first house right there next to the little house. That's there. And all those houses were built actually by me. So those 4 houses right there, I had to push every single one of them back because that was what, and these are built within this year. So we finished in February of this year. So I had to push all of them back. I realized it was going to cost me extra, but we did that. And also the neighbors shared that they wanted some green areas. Again, I have no problem with the gentleman building there. I love to see a good, nice house across the street that maybe help my value. But my questions and concerns are, one, the visibility thing. And, I hope I'm not being ridiculed for bringing that up because that's what it sounded like. But I live there. I actually live there. It's different than somebody that thinks something it can be possible. I actually live there. Second is the runoff. How much, the closer they get, the larger the footprint. What kind of, I already get, and as it was demonstrated before, there's a big slope there. So I already get a lot of runoff coming down my driveway, and all the mulch gets washed out and everything. So what's their, plan for that? And I know they do French drains and all that, but the reality is that the more concrete, the larger the footprint, the more water, is going to flow down. Madam Chair, if I allow me, I'll look at my notes here. I made a couple of notes here. The green space, and then it would have been nice to see what their plan is for the second house. At one point, one of my neighbors said they were trying to put 3 houses there. So we kind of need to know what exactly is going to be going in there.
They're not allowed to put 3 houses, it's zoned R6.
Okay, well, that's what I guess one of them kind of had heard. If you guys, choose to approve this, then I would ask to at least consider, maybe I've seen some speed bumps in some streets in Nashville. That would maybe make it a little bit safer for us being up there. My wife jogs around that hill all the time. But I think the main concern I have is that we were all told to abide by the setback, and this is not 20 years ago. This is literally 8 months ago. And the fact that this lot is shaped oddly, I sympathize, but they knew it when they bought it, and they just recently had bought it. So within last 3-4 months. So I appreciate your time and for allowing me to speak and share my neighbors' concerns.
Okay, we're going to see if the board has any questions for you before
Sure.
you get up. Okay, I had one. Have you
Yes,
seen
ma'am.
any cars run off the road that have gone around this curve? And
Run off of it?
right, have any of the cars taken the turn wrong and ended up in someone's front yard, for example?
No, but I mean, that's a good thing. I guess
It is a good thing.
But it's right now it's visible on both sides. So if you're driving up here, you can completely see the other side. And I'm not expecting there not to be a house. Please understand, I'm not opposing that at all. I love to have them there. But I think minimizing the concern of the neighbors about visibility and kind of ridiculing it, that's kind of, I wasn't even going to speak, but that kind of upset me because that's we live there. And the gentleman is an attorney, and he's very, very eloquent in speaking, but we live there, and I see it all the time. And like I said, if any of y'all have any question how fast you can go around that corner, pull up Channel 4. It was 2 months ago. There was an FBI raid in that corner house. And see how this Jeep went around the corner, almost running over two of the FBI agents. It's on Channel 4, if you like to see it before you approve it. But if there's any other questions,
Any other questions from the board members?
I appreciate the
Yeah,
time. Thank you very
for
much.
coming.
Before any commentary and response, I will ask the board if you have any questions of us even before we begin. It's fine if you don't, of course.
Can you address the comment about runoff? I'm sure Metro
Yep.
Stormwater will have to.
You took the words right out of my mouth, Madam Vice Chair. It's exactly it. We will have to do whatever Metro Stormwater tells us to do about runoff. This house and second house would both have to meet Metro Code requirements with regard to square footage limitations, FAR, footprint, et cetera, et cetera. Anything going outside of that would represent a trip to the Board of Zoning Appeals, which we've gone out of our way to avoid having to do that once we finish this. The construction of a second house is a promise. We absolutely intend to pursue that. How we design that in part depends on how this goes. So we look forward to getting on that project. We're not there yet. You don't build until you know what your parameters are. I will note that if suspects fleeing the Federal Bureau of Investigation and their driving habits are the standard by which we are held, we have no chance anywhere in this city. I do not make light of that, and I think that's a fair point that the gentleman raised. I do not wish to make it as though I'm making light of that, but instead saying that's not the norm. That's not what that road is designed to do. That's not what anybody's expected to meet in terms of their expectations. The presence of driveways to the immediate south alert drivers coming from the top side of Hill down to the southern side of Hill Circle that there are other houses still coming that way. They can see them as they're coming on that north side of Hill. They see that there's more coming. For drivers on the south side of Hill Circle, passing the several houses and going eventually past our lot, they see a driveway at what I'll refer to as the northeast corner of your picture, a two-family construction there, a nice big house that looks very good. That alerts that there are more houses coming. The visibility itself is a non-issue in this scenario. If we maxed out the entire buildable area, anybody that's got a visibility question would still have it. If we go outside of the setback areas with this variance that we seek, it will do nothing more to compromise the roadway visibility. There's a 46-foot dimension from the apex of that curve to the beginning of our house, 46 feet. And this is a car-on-car issue, not a car versus pedestrians issue. The lots to the immediate north of us are much more regular in their shape and orientation. They are roughly rectangular. And I would note that most houses in this city that get built do so within the guidelines of the bulk regulations, the zoning code at MCL 1712. Anybody is allowed to come and make a request for a variance from bulk regulations, most notably setback in this case. But you're only going to get that granted if you demonstrate that there's a clear hardship related to the land, and that's what we think we've done here. With that, we're still happy to answer any questions, but we would overtly solicit your support, your vote for approval of the variance as sought.
Mr. Michael, one question. I assume your client would not oppose installation of speed cushions or some sidewalk if NDOT decides to build it in the next 300 years on Hill Circle?
Frankly, I think every single house on that street on Hill Circle would dislike that. But no, we're in no position to oppose it if NDOT chose to do that and chose to spend taxpayer money toward that end.
Any additional questions?
Have you given much thought to doing any type of a traffic study or anything else that could provide support for some of NDOT's pushback or neighbors' worries? Because we're all speculating. None of us up here are traffic engineers or understand any of the conditions related to traffic calming measures. So
I've advised my client against it.
okay.
Additional questions? Okay. Anything additional? No? Okay. Then we'll close the public hearing and discuss.
So my issue with NDOT's position on this is NDOT is the entity with the responsibility to ensure the safety of streets and safety of pedestrians. NDOT bears the obligation to make sure that, you know, cars can safely pass and pedestrians can safely travel along the street. And NDOT's not offering anything here other than to say, don't grant this variance. And essentially, that's where their position on this doesn't carry a lot of weight with me, frankly, because, I mean, this is an exceptionally odd piece of property. I don't know that there's I have a hard time seeing someone take a position that it's not an extremely unique property. And what I'm looking at is the section in 174370 that, you know, we have to look at several things. And the two key factors that I think would, you know, push back are injury to neighboring property. And I haven't seen anything in the record that would suggest that it impacts the value of neighbor's property. And I think that the evidence of the record too indicates that there is no harm to public welfare because, you know, if anything, the harm to public welfare with this piece of land is the shape of this road as it was cut, and the lack of sidewalks and the lack of traffic calming mechanisms. So I'm supportive of the request. I think that, you know, absent essentially rendering this lot unbuildable, that something is and will go up in that space. And, you know, these visibility concerns, frankly, are not going to be the thing that solves the problem of danger on this street in this neighborhood.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with some of what you said. I think I'd put more weight on VDOT, albeit unfortunate, you know, lack of support. It would be helpful if they provided more information, line of sight. You know, I think that's, to me, the big hangup. I have no idea to what degree that this structure proposed in its current size and placement would or would not, you know, infect line of sight or anything else, right? And I don't know how fast you could technically go around this. I mean, we could speculate till, you know, end of days to figure that out. And that's why their engineers study this. And I've gone through that myself on the building side a handful of times for line of sight, speed, and a variety of other factors that at least give people more information to make an informed decision. So I agree with you on a lot of the factors of the roads and other lack of traffic calming mechanisms that are in place. But for me, I would like to see something more, whether it's from NDOT or from a traffic study or something, because it seems like the worry in the neighborhood is the cars and the people that walk around this neighborhood, the corner. And this house in its placement could cause no issue, could cause great issue, but I have no way of knowing that. And that's, to me, what's given me a little pause on it. So.
Yeah, I understand it. I think my concern is, if the house were placed there, you know, I guess really the question is whose responsibility is it to protect people that are walking or driving in the neighborhood? Is that on, you know, is that a basis for us to deny something that otherwise would sit on an exceptionally unique piece of property? Or is that something that, you know, they've demonstrated the variance and the harm and the risk to it, frankly, it's for Metro to decide. It's for NDOT to solve that problem.
I'm looking at it. Yeah, I'm looking at it. You've sort of got a traffic calming obstacle right now with the 6 trash cans right at the turn on the picture we're looking at. But what concerns me more than anything else is we don't know the second dwelling that's going to be put there. if there was only, if this was moved back, do you have more line of sight? Do you not? My driving skills, unfortunately, John Michael, are not even remotely close enough to go very fast around that bend, although I wish I was younger and could do it. That being said, the hardship of the lot is there. I'm just concerned about you trying to cram in another building. It's too valuable a piece of property in and of itself on the one, and I guess maybe I should have asked that question at the outset. And I didn't. I'm sure that there'll be a lot of thought put into it, but I can't speculate. So right now I haven't heard anything to say no. And yes, we've avoided talking about trees in great detail. But protecting the neighborhood, that's just a good neighbor. And we can't make sidewalks a requirement anymore. Is there any way to shrink the building down that you're wanting to build? And I'm now looking at you, and I don't know whether you can or you can't. I'm not suggesting one way or another. I'd defer to my seatmate over here because he's the builder.
Would you like
can
to
I ask
ask
him
a question?
to
Yes.
just address that a little bit for me? Just if you shrunk it down a little bit, because you're going to put something else in there. You just don't know what you're going to put yet because you don't know what we're going to do. And I'm sure you all, I'd be surprised if you hadn't thought about it and talked with them some. And I know you well enough that you probably have addressed that. So can you help me a little bit?
And certainly, if you want my client, Mr. Giles, to address that, he can. The reality is the presence of this house in the proposed location is in part designed so that we would have the ability to build a second house within the setbacks. Bear in mind, building a single house on this lot that completely filled the allowable building envelope would leave noticeably less visibility than two houses with the International Building Code and International Residential Codes required separation of the two buildings. As a result, it's two houses that gets us a slightly greater degree of visibility vis-a-vis the separation between the houses. Additionally, we've talked about visibility as kind of a blanket concept and not as much as what visibility of a car to what? The next car or the next obstruction or the next thing we don't want them to bump into. They're following the lines of the road. My odds say that they're going to do a pretty good job avoiding colliding with anything else. But the first actual car-oriented collision, if everybody's kind of in their correct lanes, metaphorically and literally, would be with somebody trying to come out of a driveway. That's approximately 90 feet away from the driveway that we're proposing on our lot. So the visibility from that apex is 90 feet. Regardless of where we put the house. This placement of the house with the movement into the setback, a slight one I might add, not a complete one. We live in a city with A districts. The alternative districts like a R6A would allow construction of a house on the property line. Within a 0 to 15 foot window, in fact. We don't seek that rezoning, as Ms. Carpenter often suggests.
We veered off a little bit there.
I apologize, Madam Chair.
No, that's okay.
And again, if you had a question for my client or for me on anything else, I apologize for that, but happy to take that.
I don't have a question, but it's more of an observation. As I think, as we all know, in a perfect world, yeah, if I accept Mr. Michael's argument, yeah, you should be able to see. But as we both know, and if you look at this picture, people park on the street. People have guests. People have parties. When people park on the street, that road becomes a one-lane road. And maybe, I mean, again, like, you know, NDOT's report is very lacking, so that's nobody's fault. But I just think about when people look at the cars that are already parked on the street, that two-lane road, people don't stay in their lane because there's a car parked there, and so then they move out to the middle. So that's my thing. What if people are parked on both sides of the streets? Because as this neighborhood fills out, people have guests. Only people who live there typically use their driveways because they're not super deep driveways and garages. So maybe, and I don't want to speculate, but as I look at this street, I think about, well, what happens when people park on the street? And what does that two-lane road become?
And I think, though, is there any more questions for the appellant? So we're closing the public hearing again. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so on that, like, my thing is, yeah, there totally will be cars parking, but that's not the house creating the obstruction. That's the cars that are parking as the guests of the houses that are creating that obstruction and that visibility issue, right? So it's
Yeah,
not
but
the,
that's like, I mean, that argument to me is like, okay, but you know that people are gonna, like, if there's not a house there, I mean, listen, I'm not against the house being built here, and I think that it is an unusual lot. But I think my biggest problems with this right now, and I am willing to support a variance, but I think my problems with this right now is that it has R6, so that means it has certain entitlements. I understand the argument, oh, we want to see what you guys are going to do before we think about building another house. But another way to look at it too is show me what you want. And then we can look at the entire picture, and then I could tailor whatever my vote is based off of the entire picture of the development of the lot. So I don't know, like, I understand the argument, but that's sort of where my mind is. Like, I think we have testimony from somebody who lives there, somebody who built there, saying that visibility may be an issue, and then they point to News Channel 4. So I haven't decided yet, and I'm still listening, but I think that this is also, which is why they probably enlisted the help of these capable people, this is another hard case. Because it doesn't sound like we're all on, it doesn't sound like right now they have 4 votes.
They may not. I see a lot of red lights. Does anyone
oh,
else have
I'm sorry, I just am.
comment? Oh, that's fine. I just wanted to be sure I didn't miss anyone. Might be more like a dad moment, right?
Yeah, dad, senior kind of doesn't really matter at this point, so. Yeah, I mean, where I'm getting hung up is it sounds like we might be denying a variance for a reason that's unrelated to the actual property itself, for a reason that is, I think, a concern that, frankly, I don't think the applicant would have the ability to alleviate. I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm having a hard time seeing you're going to put something right there on that piece of property, and it's going to create. I mean, it sounds like, to me, it seems like the options are either build something in that space, and it's going to block the ability to see the other side, because they're not trying to get closer to the point of that triangle, we'll call it. So it's not going to encroach, I think, any further that direction. And so, I mean, in terms of around the curve, the visibility would be the same. And so it's really just going to be closer to either side. And so I have a really hard time seeing how it's going to make much of a difference to bring it back or not.
Is the setback that's required is 27 feet roughly, and that would be on, okay, 27.6, that would be on both sides of Hill Circle. So if that, no, just one side of Hill Circle?
Yeah, and so, I mean, it would basically, you'd wind up with some sort of like pencil house that
And a pencil house wouldn't be feasible
Yeah.
to build, so by that, in and of itself, the house would be pushed back a bit
Yeah.
at that corner, so, I mean, they really wouldn't be able to build this, and it wouldn't be built that close to that corner.
So your required setbacks here, the contextual average on the, we'll call it the bottom side, right side of this drawing. Hill Circle, where the label says Hill Circle, would just be 20, 5-foot side yard setback between them and the neighbor. So what you've got is a side and a street setback. The point and the north side of the street are not contextual, it's just straight zoning code.
I'll say I don't have enough information to vote in an affirmative way today. I know we were looking around to see who might vote in which way.
I mean, I'll make a motion that we approve the variance as requested, to reduce the setbacks to 10 feet, based upon the unique and irregular shape of the lot, and satisfaction of the other factors as set forth.
Is there a second to that motion? Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye and raise your hand. We've got 2 in favor. All opposed, raise your hands. So two.
Madam Chair, before the board takes another vote, may we ask to defer our case until the next board meeting so that all 7 members can have the opportunity to deliberate?
I believe you can ask for a deferral.
We would like to politely ask for that.
We didn't go too far on our voting, right? You hadn't totaled them, right, Madam Chair?
I was just about to.
I heard the microphone activate before the no hands went up, so.
Additionally, if it should be to the board's liking, we'd be glad to submit a supplemental brief addressing some of the specific issues that the board has brought up as questions today to make sure that we're not leaving any stone unturned with regard to your analysis. One will be fine.
Okay, I'll make, second.
Okay, we have a motion. Okay, we have a motion and a second for a 1 meeting deferral. All in favor, say aye, raise your hand. We have 6-4, and I don't see any opposed. Okay. That case is finished for today. Mhm.
All right, we'll get started on our next case, 2022.
Madam,
Oh, yes?
Can we
need
take
break?
a 5-minute? Thank you. Tom's comment about,
Make a recommendation, looking ahead to the second to last item on the agenda. So case 2023-120. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in opposition to that case? Case 2023-120 is a case to do an item D expansion of a non-conforming property located at 2317 12th Avenue South. I don't see anyone here in opposition to that one. And if it pleases the board, we might make a recommendation that this one could be approved as a consent matter, unless, of course, there's any board members who wish to oppose that, and in which case we could, okay?
Okay. We have a motion and a second.
I'm sorry, second was, okay, thank you so much, all right.
Okay, any discussion? No, all in favor, say aye, raise your hand. 6 in favor and none opposed.
Okay, very well. We'll continue our agenda at this time, and then that matter is concluded at this time, and we'll send you a copy of the order of approval. Okay. All right, case 2023-119 is a request for a street setback variance for property located at 4329 Brick Church Pike. This is in the R20 zoning district. The applicants are seeking to construct a detached accessory structure. This is the zoning map of that area. So you've got a couple of different types of zoning in the area of the property. Aerial view. You can see that there's a wooded area to the rear of the lot. This is the principal structure on the lot. Then there was a foundation that was poured on the lot, and it was still present and visible when I went out to take photos of the property. So that's to the left here in this photo. And this is an aerial view to try to get a sense of what the property boundaries are, as well as how the principal structure relates to the creek that also crosses the property. And then the property, of course, has stream and floodway regulation buffers, and it's so that map is at the top, and then also the portion of the property between the stream and Brick Church Pike Road is also in the floodplain. And then here we've got a contour elevation because you're able to see in this next photo again where there's a hill to the rear of the lot, so behind the stream, and then a slope of the area depicting that hill. Here we have, let's see, setback information about the principal structure, as well as the nearest structures. Okay, and then this was the original site plan that I think depicts the foundation that was poured that I showed you in the current site photos. And then I had conducted an approximation of where that would look like on an aerial view. But my understanding at this time is that there's a new site plan that's being proposed. It's closer to Brick Church and on the opposite side of the principal structure, if I'm understanding the application correctly. And so that portion, this picture depicts what that side of the lot looks like. There's a wooded area and there's a curve in Brick Church on that side of the principal structure. And then here is the site plan that's been submitted. And then this is an approximation of what that would look like on the aerial view. So I'll go back to the site plan and ask anybody in the audience if anyone's here to speak against this request. I don't see anyone, and so you all have 5 minutes. You may begin.
Thank you. Emily Lamb, 1801 West End Avenue. There is a foundation that was poured on here. We have changed the site plan, and this updated site plan is what we're requesting your approval of for the various reasons, again, outlined in my memo that should be in your board's packet. Specifically, very unusually shaped lot. initially, this is gonna be a 50 by 60 metal structure. It's not like a drive-in garage and then, do beep bop boop into your house. It's a big, vehicle storage accessory structure. Because of and the pictures were up there, and it's also should be in your packet, because of the extreme contours on the back of the lot, as well as the buffer, we have very limited building space on this property. And that's why we moved it. Originally, we were gonna put this structure on the other side where the foundation was initially poured. We were gonna put it up there, and then after that, we learned that because of the buffer, the FEMA buffer, we would not be, even if this board granted that variance, we would have to go to the Stormwater Committee, which we were unlikely to prevail at that board. So we scrapped that or seeking to put the structure on the other side where there is a bend, but we're not, again, this isn't a garage that we're gonna be pulling in and out of onto the street. So this is not the first time y'all have heard, stormwater regulations and code zoning regulations, and they conflict, and how do we can't build within that buffer, and we've got that extreme topography on the back of the lot. So we're asking for, what I think is a pretty straightforward, reasonable request to put the structure to store some vehicles. We're very limited, again, by the topography, by the shape of the lot, and to reiterate, this is not a garage that we're gonna be pulling in and out on Brick Church, or where that curve is. So we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Is there a plan or any sort of intent to put any vegetation kind of on the side of the garage closest to Brick Church, or would it just be?
It's pretty heavily wooded as it is. We are certainly willing, if that's a condition that this board would like to see.
So, I mean, I guess my thinking is like if there's just something
For appearance purposes from
Yeah,
Brick
yeah,
Church,
just for
I
the
don't think
street.
that we're opposed to adding some landscaping.
Okay.
Or some trees there closer to where that fence was, if that's a condition that the board would like to put on the approval that we are
Tom,
requesting.
maybe I am aging. I'm just turning into Tom slowly.
And what is the purpose, I'm sorry, what's the purpose of this garage? And then how will it be accessed? Will there be any vehicle storing in it? Because right now, I don't see a driveway.
I will let my client here weigh into that, but this is gonna be vehicle storage. Do you wanna talk about access?
Vehicle storage, he'll come back out to the driveway,
Grass.
on the existing driveway. So I mean, right now, if we did anything, it'd be gravel currently. I wouldn't put concrete on there right now, but,
We'll need your name and address.
Brian Vaughn, 7266 Molly Hollow Road.
Thanks.
So you're
And
saying,
I
again,
mean,
this isn't a
basically-
garage to be pulling
Basically,
cars in and out of.
UTVs, pretty much toy storage, I guess is the best way you can put it,
okay,
I mean,
But-
so,
but
some classic.
it is cars, right?
It'll be some cars, some other stuff, but again, it's not like the cars that he's gonna be driving every day to get to work and then come home and then have to drive through his grass to get to his garage. It's
Right,
more
right.
entertainment vehicle. No, not that. It's not transportainment. What's the word I'm looking for? Fun, for fun. Fun
Toys.
vehicles, toys.
So the driveway goes around the back of the house to connect to the new garage and not across the front yard?
Across the front right now is totally clear, so probably going across the front's the easiest way. Going around the back, you'd get into that FEMA zone I'd worry about. So that'd be my biggest concern by going to the back. I could probably gravel into the back and make access to that 60-foot section you see on the back. That'd be feasible. The FEMA zone's fairly large in terms of what it shows on the map. creek
Elizabeth, if
width.
you could go to the slide that shows the FEMA in yellow, please. So we can't build within the yellow highlighted area. So we're, again, very limited space where we can build on either side of the house. So, putting a driveway, even if it's gravel, we're just, not only is it the FEMA regulations, but the shape of the lot, the way it narrows there and comes to a point, just makes it very difficult to put the structure anywhere else. Too difficult, too impossible, quite frankly.
Can it be pushed back? To be
It's
right at
pretty
the
much as
edge?
far back as we can go and not get into that FEMA buffer.
Just wondering if the orientation can be changed. Can it be rotated a bit and just keep it back from the road as much as possible?
We had literally put it all the way down to the proposal shows all the way down to the corner of the FEMA buffer
Does it?
and the road. to fit the structure.
Yeah, there's a site plan that has a yellow line at the back of it. Is that where the FEMA zone?
Yeah, I think so. I
It's a
don't,
site plan that's, yeah, I think it's page 5 of this site file.
yes, that
Yeah,
is.
so there's a yellow line that looks like it maybe goes from the edge of where the current
That's right.
structure is. I guess, I don't know if that's a residence, but.
It is.
Yeah. So from the residence around, okay,
That's an overlay of the FEMA on that site plan.
yeah.
It can be rotated a bit to be a little bit further from the road. It's not impossible.
We could look at that, perhaps rotating it a couple of feet, but it's not, I don't think it's gonna make a big
How
difference.
far
visually.
away are the adjoining properties here? I mean, a pretty good distance.
Elizabeth, could you go to the aerial, please?
Okay.
But again, we're heavily wooded out here, so we're not, is the public hearing still open? Am I allowed to be talking? I can't remember. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the public meeting's
Okay.
still open.
Okay.
We've
A
asked.
heavily
questions.
wooded area, so we don't anticipate that this is gonna be we don't have any opposition from any neighbors. I'm not aware of any in your packet. We haven't received any. So we think that the tree is gonna protect the site there some.
Okay, and if we put a condition that, that some tree buffer basically be between the structure and the
Sure.
street, okay.
We have no problem with that.
Prefer.
I didn't have a question, it was a comment, so I can wait.
Your toy storage, you're not going to have the vehicle you drive to work every day, right?
No.
You're not anticipating it, let me
No,
rephrase that. Okay, so you're going to have your ATV or your boat or whatever, and it's just going to sit there until, I'm just trying to make sure this is
Until
not
fun-
going to be a super big
until-
garage that you're going to be tooling in and out of.
No,
Okay.
not the purpose of that. I mean, there's already a carport on the back, you can pull in that.
And I was just trying to get clarification, because when Mr. Cole asked that question, I had a hard time understanding their answer to your question, and he finally answered it, so, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just have one, it is going back to, when Mr. Lawless stated, this is bigger than the current house and barn combined. What was the intended purposes for just additional toy storage, as you say, and is it boats, RV? Just seems really large, so just trying to understand what the intent on it is.
RV's 36 feet, so I mean, having that 15-foot gives you kind of buffer on the side of that. 3 UTVs in there. I mean, you want a little bit of room to go around. I mean, it's 50 by 60s. Seems like yeah, definitely bigger than the existing structure. I think it's 1,600 some odd square feet, yeah. But definitely not pulling a vehicle in the current house or anything like that, so.
And I think that, but for the elevations and the contours on the back of the lot, the stream that run through, but for all of that, we would put it elsewhere.
Oh.
And the lot's obviously large, it's just, we have limited space to store these vehicles.
I totally understand the hardship on the lot from a variety of factors, so that's, I'm not asking her that question at all, I guess. And then the other question, in size, maybe I missed it, but is there anything here that states the height of the structure or anything like that?
Just one story, right?
I think it's 14 on the sidewall. And it's a 412 roof pitch, so you're probably 16 on that sidewall.
Sidewall's 14.
Yeah, I think, do you have the plans?
Mr. Ransom, he's not permitted to exceed 24 feet in the under zoning. Due to the size of this lot, he's allowed up to 24-foot high structure.
Up to 24 feet on the structure?
It'll-
To the peak of the roof, Joey? Yeah. But it's just so unusually close due to a variety of factors, which is why I was asking. And I think you guys were looking something up, maybe I interrupted you, said.
Oh, he was,
I was gonna check the size, but I mean, it's well under the 24 feet, so wouldn't be worried about that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anything additional you'd like to say?
nothing for us unless you have further questions for us.
I don't see any, so we'll close the public hearing and discuss.
I was generally supportive of this application. It's in a very rural area. It's hard to say. It's very, my in-laws live very close to this area, so I know that it is a very difficult area to kind of build in. There's a lot of vegetation, a lot of hills, a lot of streams. So I thought that the hardship was well demonstrated, and I don't think in this stretch of Brick Church Pike, what he's building is unusual. If you just drive down through there, there's a lot of different types of buildings, because it is still very rural, especially where he is. It's going further away from town. So, I mean, like, it's, you guys understand what I'm saying. So anyway, I was generally supportive of it. I thought that they demonstrated the hardship and what they were building because of the floodplain. I thought it would work, so.
I agree, and I think Peyton maybe mentioned earlier, maybe putting contingent on some type of a landscape buffer or something. Trees, was that you?
Non-hackberries.
Yeah, that's a more of a,
Aesthetics.
well, and it's, if this is just a big metal parking structure, the idea of having some sort of like line of trees, it also might be it might add a safety component too, so that there's not like a, hey, here's all my expensive cool stuff on the side of Brick Church Pike, so that, but that was just I agree with Ms. Davis on what she's indicated for sort of the nature of it too. Obviously, I'm also pleased to see folks not building in a stream buffer or trying to impact some elevation by building this thing, so. Oh, I think I've made a motion today. Why don't you make a motion? Huh? Oh, you made the motion first. Somebody else? Yeah. Robert, you want to make a motion?
Sure. I'll make I'll make a motion to approve, I guess, the setback adjustment to 15 feet. I don't know if we can attach some type of a landscape requirement to it. Nothing.
We're going to.
Okay. So I'll make a motion as long as there's some type of moderate landscape buffer that's put up attached to it.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a
Friendly amendment that they get rid of all the hackberries around there.
Okay, just making sure.
Yes, ma'am.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye, raise your hand. We have 6 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to the last case today, 2023-122. This is a request for property located at 2456 Fairbrook Drive for a street setback reduction in the RS 15 district for a home addition. So here's the zoning map of this area. This is I think the property, you can see McGavick, like to the rear or to the top portion of this aerial view. So it's maybe, I'm not sure if it's 2 or 3 homes away, but it's also on a corner lot in the neighborhood. So here's what the house looks like. And then I went ahead and tried to get a close-up view for you to be able to see the rear of the lot that I was able to see. Just in plain view, and then there's a fence, and then that's the neighboring, or the home that's to the rear of this home. And then we've got the contextual survey available for you here. You can see that this house is oriented toward the corner. Obviously, like for the era when this house was built, a lot of times you see that. So that's one thing to point out. Whereas the other homes in the contextual block face, of course, point toward Kimberly. And then this is the site plan that's been submitted. I don't see anyone here in opposition. So you all have 5 minutes. If you please state your name and address before you get started.
Cody Hawkins. I'm with Build Group LLC, representing Dusty and Hayden Carpenter, the owners at 2456 Fairbrook Drive. There was recently a bill passed in 2022 that moved the setbacks from 30-foot setbacks to what now needs to be 95-foot setbacks. The carpenters have been planning this addition for quite some time, and unfortunately, unless you're intimate with bills being proposed and passed, you wouldn't know that a bill was passed. And unfortunately, we just waited too late to pull the trigger. And again, if you look at the homes going down Kimberly Drive, they're all horizontal with the main road here. And this is a corner lot, and with the setbacks being pushed literally into the middle of the existing homes, if we couldn't even build onto the back of the house now. So the owners, they live in the house, they are a growing family, and we're only adding 526 square feet of heated and cooled space, and approximately 1,000 square feet of front porch to the existing home.
Okay, do you have a hardship you'd like to tell us about, or can you also tell us why you're building in the front and not the back?
So the driveway loops around the back to the carport in the rear that you see on the site plan there. There's also mature trees in the rear, and we would be in the same situation by encroaching into that setback. So if you look on the site plan here, we're trying to stay out of the setbacks that we thought were available to us. And we've seen a few other homes going down McGavick Pike that have, similar size lots that they've built additional onto their homes. And we thought this was the best approach if we're going to add an addition onto their home.
Does anyone have questions for the appellant?
I think I have questions maybe for Mr. Hargis. The 2022 change in zoning that he's speaking about, was that an overlay for the neighborhood, or was that the bill that was passed that sort of set the contextual as the setback and gave the zoning administrator the...
Yes, your latter. There was the contextual setback. And I struggle with these cattywampus oriented houses. I mean, we're supposed to look at the predominant pattern of the block face that they sit on. Elizabeth, can you go back one just to the aerial? Contextual? Yeah. So this, and this one I've got to make a call of, okay, which street does this front? Does it front Fairbrook? If so, I'd go use Fairbrook. If it fronts Kimberly. So in this instance, I chose the predominant pattern being Kimberly. To be fair to the applicant, it doesn't front either street. It fronts the intersection. So council, they set aside a whole chapter for me to make determinations. Historically, I'm kind of damned either way, which way I've picked historically. I either get neighbors mad at me on Fairbrook or Kimberly if I pick one or the other. But given there are more houses on Kimberly, that's why I picked it as its contextual setback. In this instance, I was thinking too about the bill that's coming with covered front porches. I don't think it's going to help these guys, but yeah, I mean, it's just kind of, I'm sort of at an impasse a little bit if you look at it, from an administrator side. Years ago, when we did the zoning code, we looked at the plat. What did the plat say? If the plat was silent, then we looked at the zoning code. What did the zoning code say? 30 feet. Okay, great. There's your setback. Didn't matter which street. So I understand the goal of this council, maybe not this council, the prior councils of trying to line things up. It doesn't, it's almost your horses and courses. This one doesn't fit. It just doesn't. Corner lots that houses face the corner don't work in that scheme. So I think you're going to see more of these,
That's why it comes to us.
It does. I've just got I've got no way to dig around what the code says, so.
Could you tell us about, on this image that's shown on the screen, what is the importance of the 50% of contextual setback? For example, one says 47.7 feet. Why is that depicted on the, or do we know? Is there any importance to that?
I'm sorry. Are you talking to me?
Well, yeah, there's a provision in the code that corner lots created by plat prior to 98 can reduce the side street setback in half. That would be my only guess as to why that notation's there, but maybe the applicant can.
Did you have an answer to the question?
No, I was not aware of why that's on there either.
Okay, thank you.
Does that provision still apply?
It does. It does.
Most cases it does apply.
Of course, if Kimberly's front, then Fairbrook's the side street, and that provision would apply.
In which case, a 56 feet would be more than the 47 feet that they're requesting, or would be what they want to do would be compliant with this 50% contextual for a corner lot.
It would. For us, the code, though, in that 50% reduction talks about that runs along the side of the residential structure, and that's where I'm kind of heading in here, because it's to the front of the residential structure, not to the side.
So Joe, you're saying that's previous 98, it was 50% reduction on the side.
On the side of a house. And envision, if you think about the lots in East Nashville and West Nashville too, you've got the house facing the shorter lot line, and then there's the side street. The goal was to not stick them with a full side street setback on both streets.
And I don't think we haven't closed the public meeting yet, right?
We haven't. Somehow we ran out of time, but I think that was an error.
Do you know when the house was built, the original structure?
It was in the 60s. I don't know exactly.
So it would have predated even this.
Any additional questions for the appellant, or do you have anything else to share before we close the public hearing?
Yeah, I had no other comments other than, the orientation of the home is another one of the hardships that we had to fight. That's all I had to say.
And one other question, the houses on the adjacent three other catty corners, from my quick look, they also all look like they're kind of at an angle similar to this, correct? Do you know?
Down Kimberly?
Across, down Kimberly, and so if you're gonna go to your neighbor on the side of Fairbrook, neighbor on the side of your Kimberly, and directly across, they all are all equally angles, okay. Okay. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Take yourself back in time.
That's right. I don't have any more questions for that, but I've got one for Joe.
Whenever you want to use on a corner.
Peyton, you have one?
Okay, it doesn't look like there's any other questions, so we'll close the public hearing and discuss.
So just based on that aerial view, it looks like they can go backwards. Based on the aerial view and the site plan that we have, that there is space in the backyard to build towards the back.
There is a little space, then they run into the setback, but I agree, there is some space.
I mean, they're
There will be a rear yard in the corner lots. That's a strange provision too. They'll have a 20-foot setback off the left-hand side, western, if that's north. If top's north, it'll be along that western property line. They'll have a 20-foot setback there.
There's an image in the presentation that shows the rear setback, if we could go back to that one.
But that's, if the rear setback,
one.
that's assuming then Fairbrook is the front, not Kimberly, right?
And the address is Fairbrook, but I guess that you were saying that it seems like it fronts Kimberly due to the block face.
Yeah.
The code gives a default to the shorter lot line is considered front for purposes of counting the rear yard.
Is Kimberly the shorter one?
Fairbrook's the shorter.
Oh, Fairbrook's shorter. Okay.
Taking away this.
Yeah.
So the zoning code says that Fairbrook's the front.
Yeah.
So then that means Kimberly essentially is the side.
It would be, but for the 2022 amendment that says max context of the block face, I don't have a block face on Fairbrook.
Right. I'm
But if
just trying to
Kimberly,
get to that
well,
50%.
if Kimberly's the side though, and that's the side of the residence, then that gets them to the 50%.
That's what I was trying to
Yeah.
get at, but I don't,
So,
It talks about, in addition to the side of the setbacks reduced by 50% along the side of the residential structure. And that's where I struggle here, because it's not the side of the residential.
yeah, and I think that,
Portion of it is.
well, and I think that the residential structure was built before that, so I think that the concept of side is, you know,
Joey, I have one question for you. Just a general question in regards to your comment earlier about some forthcoming adjustments or clarifications to covered porches. What exactly is that, and when is that happening?
The current code allows for awnings, patio covers, and canopies projected not more than 6 feet off the building wall, as long as they're cantilevered.
Right.
And they've many times come to this board and say, hey, I just want to do vertical post, I'm still covering it. But with that text amendment, will say that enclosed space or that covered front porch cannot be enclosed. If you enclose it, you're subject to setback. If you leave it open, then it wouldn't be, which is the same condition this board puts on all of them that y'all granted.
Say that last sentence again, sorry.
To remain open, this board's always, when they've granted a setback for a covered front porch, they've said, hey, it just has to
there can't
remain
be
open.
conditioned space.
And
Right,
what
I
we're gonna do
understand
is,
that. I was just wondering if that might change the setback. It sounds like the setback, under this current one I'm looking at, if that changes anything.
I don't know that it changes
setback.
here, because I think this porch area is greater than 6 feet and beyond the building wall.
Well, and because you pointed out the building in the back, but the only thing that worried me about that was that it actually would put it closer to the residential, the
To
neighboring.
the house next door.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so, if the goal is, to me, that might actually injure neighboring property worse than having it bump out like this versus, that, I mean, if you build, it looks like the neighbor on, and I don't even know if its front is Fairbrook or whatever's around the corner, but it looks like there was a house right at the back
Yeah,
of that.
to the left up then,
Yeah.
where it says Bradford Cole,
Yeah.
that's,
Oh, yeah.
that's a house that faces Kimberly. That's its front.
Yeah,
Oh, gotcha.
like that one in
Yeah.
the back. So,
This is a text change that we've got to come up with something else on corner lots where these houses face the corners. It worked fine in the original text of the code, because it was you just looked at the table. Oh, it's R20, 30 feet, have a nice day. But then as we got more developed, maybe there's parts of Nashville or certain zone districts that, hey, just use the table, and in other more densely populated zone districts, we do contextual averages on corners.
yeah, my concern is that if applying a 95.5-foot setback with the back setback on them, you're essentially rendering,
Yeah, we got a problem.
that's teetering on regulatory taking
It is.
territory.
We had a council member propose that very thing on corner lots, do contextual on both streets. I'm like, well, council member, the only problem with that is in your own district, I quickly pointed out to them, there's 30 lots that are now unbuildable.
Yeah.
Because the corner lots, the way the neighborhood's developed, the corner was part of this subdivision plat.
Right.
And it had lesser, and then the lots that were deeper that were complaining these houses are out in front of them. Now, if I apply that contextual setback, now the setback takes up the entire property.
Yeah.
So we came up with the compromise in that case of using just the table setback on the side street.
In a way, this is an addition to a non-conforming structure because the house encroaches on that
It
95-foot
does.
setback. So in a way, it's,
Well, yeah, in a sense it does in portions of that building. We've treated those additions where they're coming closer to the road as straight variances, where you're increasing the degree of nonconformity. We just treated them straight as a variance. In that text change I mentioned about doing contextual on both streets, that it doesn't affect this zone district, it's R20 and up. So R15 falls under use the context. R20, we did to do just the table only. Maybe that's a revisit that needs to occur. But, stuff this board does leads to text changes. Like, if we keep seeing the same variance over and over again, there's something wrong with the code,
well, I think the lot shape is not unique, but the way the house is situated is unique. And to apply the contextual street setback to this particular property is problematic. And I would be willing to support the variance request for that reason.
I make a motion that we approve the variance as requested due to the hardship of it's a corner lot and the orientation of the house on the corner lot.
Second.
We have a second. We have a motion, a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye, raise your hand. We have five, opposed. 5 in favor, 1 opposed. And congratulations, you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Motion to adjourn, yes.
Passes unanimously.
Hey, you had to step in Mr. Pepper's shoes, did a great job.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.